Hello and welcome to the Business Spotlight interview series. I'm your host Sonali Nigam, and today I'm joined by Ian Harris, MD at Maber Architect Limited. Hi Ian, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Sonali. Really good to be with you.
Thank you, pleasure is all mine. Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, certainly. So, I'm an executive director at Maber Architects. We are architects, landscape architects, and interior designers. We have about 70 people in the business and four offices across the UK. Um, and I've been with the business for 25 years. The business has been around since 1983. So I've really kind of grown up in my career through the business, really, starting as a graduate back in 2000 and then having all sorts of fun along the way, opening offices, leading teams, and eventually, about 7 years ago, becoming managing director. And then most recently, having the absolute pleasure to transition the business to become 100% employee owned. So we now have a new team of three directors, and the three of us are steering into those new and exciting waters.
Interesting, Ian. 25 years in the business. So, what do you attribute your growth to?
Um, that's really good. So I think growth in two ways. The growth of the business has always been pretty steady and sustainable. And we have never done the boom bust thing. The directors that I grew up under and then became a part of the team leading the business uh, were very much into sustainable growth. And the way we achieved that was by investing in really great people, by spreading across quite a wide range of sectors and different disciplines, which was very useful when downturns come along. Often, one or two sectors are hit harder than others. And so the fact that we've been able to pivot with a good track record and good experience into other things has been very beneficial over the years, including opening overseas at times. Although we don't currently have an operation overseas. And then I think in terms of personal growth, looking at it from the other side of the coin, that's a really interesting one. I think probably a lot of experiences, a lot of mistakes. Fail fast and fail well, I once heard as a mantra. Don't be afraid to try things, but then at the same time, don't be afraid to walk away from them quite quickly if they're not working out. But yeah, I learned a lot. Went to university to learn about how to be an architect, and have ended up kind of leading a business, and that's not what you trained for. So learning along the way. Every day's a school day.
Thank you. This brings me to the next question learning. It is so essential. So, what has been your biggest learning as the owner of the business running successfully?
So I think leadership is a really important, vital, but actually quite undervalued and under talked about skill set. So what I mean is that most people in most businesses get success in the business as a practitioner. In my case, I join as an architect, I get tolerably good at it, I deliver some buildings, then someone asks me to run a small team, and then before you know it, it's running an office, and then before you know it, you're on the board of directors, and then before you know it, you're managing director. And nobody trained you specifically for those things, although I've got lots of training to be an architect. And the temptation is to keep going back to the practitioner bit because that's what I like and that's what I'm good at and that's what I know. That's where the comfort zone is. Pressing into leadership is a whole different thing. And I think everybody, including me, I think when they first given authority over other people, probably make the same mistake. And they imagine that other people now have to do things just because they're told. So
Mm.
positional authority. I'm telling you to do it, you better go and do it. And and I spent when I was first made an associate director, I spent the first, I don't know, few months or so, I had some rocky relationships with people because I thought now I had a fancy title, I could just tell people what to do. And of course that's nonsense. That's not the way that you build a successful business or good relationships. So I'm a huge fan of the idea of servant leadership. Um, oh my goodness, you get me on a pet topic. But 1970, Robert K. Greenleaf publishes this fantastic essay, The Servant as Leader, and it sets out the really obvious logical case as to why you have to be a servant leader, why it's the only logical conclusion to leadership is to be a servant leader. And we can do this in like 20 seconds, Sonali. So if I ask you, I'll pitch you two different leaders, and you've probably worked for both of these sorts of people. One leader is someone who you know is in it for themselves. They leave early, they're not accountable, they kick the team when the team make a mistake, they take all the glory and hog it when those up top give some praise. Um, you never get credit for your ideas. They're in it for themselves. You know that. They are fundamentally that kind of boss. The other type of leader is somebody who you know is in it for the team and they are looking after you. They are sheltering you from, running interference when other departments or other people are trying to impose different challenges or problems that the team can't meet. They're quick and generous with their credit and their praise and their thanks. They understand the people who are working for them. Of those two leaders, who would you rather work for?
The second one, most
Of
definitely.
course. It's an absolute no-brainer. Everybody would say the same
Yeah.
thing. And yet there are so many leaders out there who are the first one. A lot of
Yes.
people are not well suited to leadership. Now, the follow-up question is, this second leader that we've agreed that we want to work for, there are two different potential ways that that person could be that way.
Hmm.
One is that they are naturally inclined to serve other people. They don't
Okay.
mind the authority, they don't mind taking responsibility, they don't mind the tough calls, but they're doing it on behalf of other people. And that's borne out in their private and personal lives just as much as it is at work. The other type of person doesn't really feel that way, but they know it's the most successful strategy. So that's the way they act at work. Of those two types of leader, who would you rather follow?
The first one now.
Of course,
Yes.
absolutely. So if we can, as leaders, generate eh, now, if you're a leader, the thing you need is followers, right? I don't care what it says on your office door, your email signature. If you look over your shoulder and no one's following you, you are not leading anybody.
True.
You're not a leader. I don't
Yeah.
care what you call yourself. You might be a manager, but you're not a leader. If you want to generate followers, those are the characteristics that we have to grow in ourselves. And thankfully, most of the last 40 years of leadership theory heads in that direction. And people like Simon Sinek and there's so much really great stuff written around that now. Um, but yeah, 1970, Robert K. Greenleaf. If you haven't ever read it, it's 40 pages. You can read it in less than an hour. It's amazing. The Servant as Leader. That's the essay you need. It's great.
Yeah, and I'm still stuck there because A, I can see leader talking. B, I can see how well you've described it. So thank you for doing that. Okay, now I need to move on to the next question. Sorry. So there are a lot of business owners listening to you. What would you say are the biggest misconceptions about running a business, and how do you address them?
Gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've talked about quite a few. The idea that people just do
Yes,
what they're told because they're told.
don't.
The
Yeah.
idea it's not down to me to motivate and capture them. It's they should just do it. That's a big misconception. The transition from practitioner to coach, that's quite an important one because when you get to be a really good practitioner, particularly in the startup phases of a business, when it's all
Hmm.
exciting and everybody's doing a bit of everything, uh, you're just wading in with answers and you're delighted. Everyone likes to have the right answer, right? If a team comes to you or a member comes to you from a team and says, "Oh, I've got this problem. What do you think?" It's nice to be able to know the answer and go, "Oh, yeah, I know just what you should do there." Resisting that savior complex and actually becoming the coach, that's a really, really important part of developing and a misconception, I think, in leadership and in businesses generally, that the people higher up the tree always have to provide the answers. I would say you don't. I think you have to provide the questions. Teach them to fish. Don't just give them fish. And if you know what the answer is, that's terrific. Now ask the smartest question you can ask to help them find that answer. And they'll get, well, I don't know. What do you think we should do? Well, I think we should do this. Okay, well, that's interesting. But there's a couple of things I know that you don't know. So I know this and I know this. Now I've told you those things. Does that change what you think we should do? Well, yeah, it does. I think we should do this now. Great. I think we should too. Go and do it. Take them on a path to find the answer, not just hand it to them. I think that's a big misconception is that leaders or business bosses have to have all the answers. We really don't. I mean, we really don't. If we're not hiring people smarter than us, what are we doing?
Yeah, true,
Um,
very true. And I feel like I can continue listening to you, and I'm like sitting. I don't know. I mean, I'm so engrossed in what you're saying that I literally don't know what is the next question that I need to ask. But because this podcast has to continue, so we've talked about various aspects of business now. I would also want to talk about the challenges that you faced during this journey. So, what are those challenges, and how have you dealt with it? We would love to know that. Not because um, we don't want to know your wins, but of course these are the phases where we learn the most. So yeah.
yeah. I mean, in terms of right bang up to date, I suppose current challenges, we've got economic challenges. We have, increased national insurance at the moment. Still waiting to see how the tariff situation. It won't affect us directly, but it affects many, many of our customers. And the problem is with architecture that for most businesses, a big capital investment like a new building is the easiest thing to switch off when times become rough. If you're looking at a shortfall, just don't build that new 40 million pound factory. That's we can kick that down the road for a year.
Yeah.
So we tend to be like the sort of canaries in the coal mine and sort of the early indicators of economic turmoil. At the moment, actually, our forward order book looks pretty good and better than the last few years, and that's very encouraging, and not by accident. Finding good people is always a challenge in every business, but particularly in the service sector like us, we don't make anything, we don't produce widgets that we can put on a warehouse shelf and ship. The only thing we've got to sell is the talent and passion and enthusiasm of our people. So getting the right people and then encouraging and harnessing and building that talent is really critical. So that's that. People is probably the biggest challenge day to day for most businesses, I would imagine. And then personally, I've had a funny year. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor this time last year. I started having seizures and seeing flashing lights, and it was so I had brain surgery last October. The tumor was removed, but it has left me partially sighted. So the upper right-hand quadrant in both eyes, because it was damaged to the occipital lobe, um, doesn't really work. So I have found reading and writing for about 5 months. I couldn't do it at all, and using a screen and interacting with digital device. And that has taught me an awful lot about acceptance, right? Because some things we can change, some things we can never change. Knowing the difference between them, that's really important. And accepting the situation as it was, seizures, I couldn't drive, brain tumor, surgery. Now I can't see as well as I used to be able to. Um, what am I going to do? Crawl into a corner and cry about it, or accept the situation as it is and press into it and work out how to do things differently and better. So adapting to some new bits and pieces of software and getting the computer to read to me and talk to it more. And uh, colleagues have been fantastic about adapting to that and even reading out spreadsheets to me when I really couldn't see them and stuff like that. So yeah, business challenges are personal challenges.
I think after every question I should pause because you would have left me, you always leave me on a note where I'm like, what next? But thank you for being vulnerable. At the same time, I mean, while we were learning about your challenges in business, I mean, the way you've talked about your life and the way that you've managed the current challenge, I think not everybody that I have on my podcast do that. So, yeah. Well, while we've touched about your personal aspect, so how do you balance between the professional and the personal life? How do you strike that perfect balance between the two? Yeah, we would love to know that also.
I don't think there's much perfect about it, but I suppose what I try to do is bring as much passion to hobbies and relationships, family, friends outside of work as I do, as I try and bring passion to the office. So I think creativity and passion have always been drivers for me. And so I have, so I'm never very far away from a guitar or two. So I play, write, and record music. In fact, I think there's probably, yes, there's probably at least two back here at the moment.
Yes.
So playing music is great. I also love photography as well. I love film photography, so I have some older, um, more classic cameras, which I really enjoy messing around with. Um, Family, uh, gosh, this year's been a big one. We have twin boys who are 24 this year. They're both getting married this year.
Wow.
I didn't think twins could get any more expensive than university, but they have managed to find a way. So we had James's wedding on Sunday, which was just 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And yeah, Tom's getting married later in the year. So investing time and effort and really loving, relishing seeing those guys grow up. And I've talked a bit about my hobbies. They've pinched them both. So Tom is currently doing a master's in documentary photography. So he's pinched all my camera stuff. And James did a degree and now works in audio engineering. So he's pinched all my fancy music toys. So so, so it's kind of but yeah, which is great because we've got so much to talk about when we get together, and just loving seeing those guys and my youngest son as well flourishing. Um, I just investing as much passion in work and out of work. That in a way is the balance. And then if one falls off, the other, you know, can't outstrip it too far before you're going to get really seriously out of whack. Anyway, sorry, too much.
Yeah, there isn't a word for you or too much because, as I said, I can continue listening to you, and I'm sure our audience have learned and picked up so many things. So, is there any closing remark or a golden nugget that you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
I think the only thing that has really occurred to me a lot over time is that I'm a big fan of the discontented leader. This idea that leadership is not there to make you happy, that actually, if you're doing it right, you should be discontented. And what I mean by that is leaders need to storm out into the middle of the field, plant a flag, and say, it's brilliant over here because I can see something, some potential in the person or in a project or in a business or whatever that you can't see yet. They don't have to always generate the ideas, but they can see that potential, have to name it and plant that flag. And then their job is to lead their followers to that flag, to that new place, to that new potential, to the fulfillment of whatever this great idea is that we've maybe collectively agreed or the leaders seen on themselves, doesn't really matter. The problem is, and the discontentment is the tension of standing in the middle of a field, standing on an idea, standing on a vision or a passion or a strategy that other people haven't quite got yet. Um, Embrace it, love it. That is a brilliant tension to be in. Discontentment is okay, and actually fuels and drives us. The problem is when the team does get to that flag, you can't be there because you need to be planting the next flag,
Extra.
and
Yeah.
and love it or hate it, embrace it or don't. But if you think it's there to make you happy, it's sort of missing the point. You can have purpose. You can have a sense of real joy, yeah, and knowing that you're doing the right thing. There is a contentment, uh, but there is always this tension, and we have to live in it.
In being a leader. So, thank you so much for your time today, Yan. It was great speaking to you and learning so much about your journey. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for that. And to everyone watching, I look forward to see you in my next episode. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Snarling.